I found in my organic chemistry class that students have a hard time identifying what they've learned. And so for the last few years, I've been incorporating the Ignatian Examen into my course. And we take the first 5 to 7 minutes of class once a week. And we use this 500-year-old method of internal contemplation, which has 5 parts to it, if you're not familiar with it. The first part of the examen is really an opportunity to take an inventory of your space, to just pause and identify the people that you're with, the place that you find yourself in. As an instructor, I know that I often am running from thing to thing to thing. My calendar just feels like it's overflowing. And so it's a good thing to pause and just remind myself that I'm in the presence of wonderful people who are good-natured, who are really gifts to work with, and hopefully for students to take an opportunity to just be grateful for their opportunity to learn, and also to just remind themselves what class that they're in. Sometimes I think for the first 15 minutes, students aren't necessarily sure what class they find themselves in. And then we move to the second part of the examen, which is the moment of gratitude. Our entire Catholic Ignatian mission springs forth out of gratitude. And so I ask students to identify one thing, just one thing that they are specifically grateful for. It can't be an abstraction, like love or world peace, or good food, which are all good things, but it has to be one concrete thing, a text that they received from a parent, or an encouraging word that they had from someone as they were walking across campus, or even just a wave that they received from someone, or an Amazon package that they've been eagerly awaiting. And that's because, Ignatian spirituality is incarnational. It is something that exists in the physical substance of the world that we live in. It's not this ethereal mist, this ethereal thing. It's something that lives and breathes in the space that we exist in. So they have to be grateful for a specific concrete thing. And then we move into the third part of the examen, which is the reflection on their internal movements. So what are those things that are stirring beyond the level of the mind, but are really stirring in the deepest parts of their being, whether they're positive, maybe they are riding a high from a victory on a sports or athletic team or a club event that went really well. Or maybe it's a low, maybe they are really struggling with a academic project or a conversation that they had with a roommate or a significant other or a family member. But what are those things that are really in the deepest part of their being that have a hold on them? And then we move into the fourth part of the examen, which asks students to think about, now that you've weighed these emotions that kind of have a hold on you, where is your area for growth? The early Greek bishop, Saint Irenaeus, said that the glory of God is a human being fully alive. So where are those areas of our life where we are being called to be more fully alive? And I think that's a great question for us to ask ourselves, but also just to ask the people that we live and work with. Where am I called to be more fully alive, a fuller version of myself? And then finally, we get to the fifth part of the examen, which is looking ahead to tomorrow. What are those things on my calendar, on my horizon, that are coming down the pipeline? Again, Ignatius was not a complete mystic. Ignatius was a practical person. he had a calendar. He had things that he had to deal with. And so our students have calendars. We have calendars. What's that meeting that's coming up? How am I feeling about that? Am I nervous about that? Oh gosh, I see I've got this paper that I got to write. How is that coming along? And so I ask students to think about, what are those things that are coming up? How are you feeling about those? Again, how are those things stirring in the deepest part of your being? And then we finish with 2 minutes of journaling. And what I love about the 2-minute free write is that it takes the examen kind of beyond the level of just reflection or just a mental break. And it takes it into this area that we would call discernment, where discernment is asking you to look at what are the patterns in your life that, again, are making you into a fuller version of yourself, a more human, or what are the patterns in your life that are maybe the enemy of your human nature. And I think it's beautiful that at the end of the semester, students have their organic chemistry notebook with all these formulas and equations and chemical structures, but interspersed throughout there, they have these little 2-minute free writes of their hopes and their dreams and their struggles. And hopefully, as they read back over those, they'll start to see patterns of what brought them alive and also what have been some struggles, some desolations that they've dealt with. So if you'd like to stick around for another 3 minutes or so, I'll do a short abridged version of the examen. So you'll get a taste of what my students experience in organic chemistry once a week. Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. It's wonderful to be with you again. It's time for our weekly examen. Let's take a moment and just reflect on where we find ourselves today. For those of us who are on campus, what are the spaces that we walked past to get to our learning space today? For those of us who are learning remotely, what are the spaces that we find ourselves in? The bedrooms, the living rooms, the kitchen tables. What are the spaces that we find ourselves in today? The weather. Let's put our feet flat on the ground and relax back into our chair. Let's start with a deep breath in and a deep breath out. One more deep breath in and a deep breath out. Today's examen is going to focus on fear, control, and attachment. But before we dive into that, let's start like we always do with a moment of gratitude. What's one specific thing that you are grateful for today? What's one concrete thing that you are grateful for today? Is it someone that you saw? Something that you received? Something you gave? What's one specific thing that you're grateful for today? As we turn inwards, fear, control, and attachment are strong tides that we have to navigate in our life. Is there a fear that you're facing coming up? Maybe an exam that you're preparing for? Is there something that you're trying to control in your life? Maybe a relationship? Is there something that you find you're attached to? An outcome that you really want to make sure that it comes out a certain way? Look over fear, control, and attachment. Try to zero in on just one of these, the strongest emotion that comes to mind. Don't judge it. Just take note of it and name it. I want you to bring to mind someone that you feel comfortable talking with, someone who you could tell absolutely anything to. Does this trusted confidant have any words of wisdom or advice about this emotion, this fear or control or attachment issue that you see in your life? Looking to tomorrow and the horizon, what's coming up next? Is there something that maybe you're afraid of or looking to control or feel like there's an attachment that's coming down the pike? What does that stir inside of you? Is there a grace that you might want to ask for to be better prepared for this thing that's coming up? Let's go ahead and take 2 minutes to journal about this. Journal about what was the most salient, strongest part of today's examen for you.